The 911 recording began with sirens wailing in the background and Karen shrieking into the phone. "He stole the boat. My son deserves it more. He has aspirations." The dispatcher responded calmly, "Ma'am, the registration isn't his name." Karen's voice cracked with frustration. "But he's not fun. He just uses it to fish. Brody has dreams. He's going to be famous." In the background, Brody could be heard yelling something about creative oppression and maritime discrimination. Meanwhile, I was calmly docking my pontoon at the police-designated pickup point, with 3 body cam officers filming Karen's son weeping in swim trunks on my driveway. I'm Tyler Bangan, 38, a retired paramedic, part-time boat mechanic, and full-time owner of a modest home in Seaglass Cove Estates. This waterfront community aspired to luxury, complete with an HOA more obsessed with appearances than sanity. It was the kind of place where lawn height was measured with rulers and mailbox colors required committee approval. Every house looked like it had been designed by the same architect suffering from a beige fever dream, complete with mandated coastal charm shutters that had never faced a hurricane. I kept my boat, the mild peril, behind my house, in a covered dock space I had paid extra to build. Nothing fancy, just a 22-foot pontoon, perfect for weekend fishing and the occasional sunset cruise. The dock alone had cost me $12,000 in permits, thanks to the HOA's Marine Infrastructure Enhancement Committee, which was really just Karen and 2 other women who believed they understood maritime law because they had watched a documentary about yacht clubs. Enter Karen Liu, HOA president, loud-voiced wine enthusiast, and mother to Brody, 23-year-old man-child who referred to himself as a jetfluencer. Karen possessed that particular brand of suburban confidence that comes from never being told no and having far too much time on her hands. She wore oversized sunglasses indoors and treated community meetings like personal performance art. Her voice could carry across 3 lots when she grew excited about property values or community standards. Brody, meanwhile, spent his days creating what he called aquatic lifestyle content with a waterproof phone case and delusions of grandeur. He had 17 followers on TikTok, mostly family members and a few bots. His content consisted mainly of shirtless poses near anything water-related, from backyard pools to decorative fountains. The kid had never owned a boat, never worked on a boat, and as far as I could tell, had never even driven a boat. Yet he spoke about maritime entrepreneurship as if he were planning to launch a yacht charter business. Things remained quiet until Brody noticed my boat, and Karen got ideas. It started small, as these things always do. Karen mistakenly treated my dock as public space, and allowed Brody to film TikToks on it. I would come home to find him posing shirtless on my boat lift, talking to his phone about manifesting maritime success. When I asked him to leave, he looked genuinely confused. "But it's community property, right?" "Wrong." I assumed it was a simple misunderstanding. The next week, Karen appeared at my door with a clipboard and a smile that never reached her eyes. "Tyler, I've been thinking about community resource optimization," she said, inviting herself onto my porch. "That beautiful boat of yours, it's such a waste sitting there unused." I pointed out that I used it every weekend. "Yes, but think about the potential," she continued. "Brody could create content that showcases our community's lifestyle amenities. It's marketing." I told her no. She left, but not before measuring my dock with the tape measure and muttering about underutilized assets. The following Tuesday, I received a formal HOA notice regarding watercraft maintenance standards and proper marine equipment utilization. Apparently, my boat was not being used in accordance with community wellness initiatives. Then Karen emailed me, claiming I was underutilizing valuable marine assets and suggesting I consider community sharing opportunities. The email was 3 paragraphs of corporate speak that essentially boiled down to, "My son, use your boat." I ignored her, which was apparently the wrong move. She followed up with a second email about neighborly cooperation and a third about supporting local youth entrepreneurship. When I still did not respond, Karen escalated. She began parking her white Mercedes at the end of my driveway, claiming she was monitoring watercraft usage patterns for the HOA board. She would sit there for hours, sunglasses on, engine running, air conditioning blasting, just staring at my boat. Neighbors started asking questions. Mrs. Patterson from next door mentioned that Karen had been inquiring about my boat schedule and whether I was maximizing its community potential. Karen Yin created a spreadsheet tracking my comings and goings, complete with timestamps and notes about missed opportunities for community engagement. She presented this to the HOA board as evidence of resource mismanagement. The board members, to their credit, looked at her as if she had lost her mind. But Karen pressed on, convinced she was fighting the good fight against maritime selfishness. 2 weeks later, I came home from a supply run to find the mild peril gone. The dock ropes had been cut clean through, leaving the empty lift swaying gently in the wind like a maritime crime scene. My security camera had been spray painted black, and there were muddy footprints scattered all over the dock. The theft was so brazen that it was almost impressive. Almost. Karen, with her sun hat tilted at an aggressive angle, met me in the driveway before I could even fully process what had happened. "Don't be so dramatic," she said, examining her nails. "Brody's just taking it to the lake for some exposure. He's tagging the HOA. It's great press." I asked if she was out of her mind. She adjusted her oversized sunglasses. "Tyler, you're being selfish. That boat sits there 90% of the time. Brody has followers. He's building a brand." The audacity was breathtaking. She stood there in her designer athleisure wear, lecturing me about my own property usage as if she were conducting a business meeting. "Think of it as a community partnership," she continued. "Brody gets content, the HOA gets exposure, and you get to support local youth initiatives. Everybody wins." I pointed out that nobody had asked for my permission. "Well, technically, the HOA bylaws give us certain rights regarding community asset management," she said, pulling out her phone. I called the sheriff. Karen called 911 on me. She told the dispatcher that I was creating a hostile environment and intimidating HOA officials in the performance of their duties. The woman had stolen my boat and was now claiming I was the problem. It was like watching someone set fire to your house and then complain about the smoke. Karen informed the 911 operator that I was threatening a community youth and displaying aggressive behavior toward HOA leadership. When the deputies arrived 20 minutes later, Brody was doing donuts on the water while blasting electronic dance music and filming a boat tour. He had taped over my boat's name with the words "Brody Yacht Life" in gold letters. The kid was wearing a captain's hat he had clearly bought that morning, complete with the price tag still attached. One deputy asked, "Do you have registration?" I did. I had everything: registration, insurance, receipts, and photos of the cut dock lines. The deputy examined the paperwork while Karen hovered behind him, explaining how community assets should serve community needs and how I was standing in the way of progress. The officer's expression grew increasingly skeptical. With each word that came out of her mouth, Karen tried claiming HOA asset reallocation rights and insisted the boat was technically community property since it was visible from common areas. She had apparently spent the morning Googling legal terms and thought she could lawyer her way out of grand theft. The officer blinked slowly. "Ma'am, that's not a thing." Karen's voice pitched higher. "But he's not even using it properly. Brody has a vision." The deputy looked at Brody, who was now attempting tower ski behind my pontoon while filming himself. "Ma'am, we need to sort this out." Brody was escorted back to shore, dripping wet and indignant. The boat was impounded temporarily while they investigated. I sued Karen and the HOA for property theft, trespass, and unauthorized use. During discovery, I learned this wasn't Karen's first reallocation. She had once given a neighbor's hammock to a yoga instructor to promote wellness. And before that, she had donated someone's garden gnomes to a community beautification project without asking. The deeper we dug, the more outrageous it became. Karen had been operating like a suburban warlord, redistributing property based on her personal judgment of who deserved what. She had loaned out Mrs. Chen's ladder to a window washer, given away Mr. Thompson's lawnmower to a landscaping company, and somehow convinced herself these were legitimate HOA activities. The woman had created her own little socialist paradise, except she was both the government and the beneficiary. Her insurance refused to cover legal fees, citing intentional acts of property conversion. HOA members were furious when they realized their dues might go toward Karen's legal defense. The community Facebook group exploded with stories of Karen's helpful redistributions that nobody had previously connected. A recall vote was scheduled. Karen spent the week before the vote going door to door, explaining how it was stifling community growth and attacking a young entrepreneur. Most neighbors just stared at her in disbelief. At the hearing, I played Brody's own videos, each showing clear possession, mockery, and one unfortunate clip of him yelling, "Ownership is a construct, man," while doing backflips off my boat. The judge watched in silence as Brody explained his vision for democratizing maritime experiences and how traditional boat ownership was limiting community potential. Karen sat behind him nodding enthusiastically, apparently believing this was a winning strategy. The prosecution presented evidence of the cut dock lines, the spray-painted security camera, and Karen's own emails about asset reallocation. When asked to explain the legal basis for taking my boat, Karen launched into a 20-minute speech about community cooperation and supporting local creators. The judge stopped her halfway through. "Mrs. Liu, do you have any legal documentation authorizing this action?" She didn't. Karen was removed as president in a 42-3 vote. The three holdouts were her sister, her neighbor, and surprisingly the mailman, who apparently appreciated Karen's entrepreneurial spirit. Brody was fined $1,500, banned from the marina, and forced to publicly apologize in the HOA newsletter. The apology was half-hearted at best, mostly consisting of him explaining why he still thought he was right. "I got my boat back, plus damages for the cut ropes and scratched hull." Karen stood in the community center parking lot afterward, red-faced and shaking. "This is discrimination against ambitious young people," she screamed at anyone within earshot. Brody was going to make this community famous. "You're all just jealous of his vision." She kicked a trash can and stormed off to her Mercedes, muttering about small-minded people and crushing entrepreneurial dreams. 3 weeks later, she moved 2 blocks over the following month, still convinced she was right in spirit. And Brody pivoted to land-based influencing, now reviewing luxury lawn chairs from his mother's backyard.